Welcome to the launch of the 2021 Global Agricultural Productivity Report, Strengthening the Climate for Sustainable Productivity Growth. This year, we are exploring the urgent need to accelerate productivity growth at all scales of production to meet the needs of consumers and address threats to human and environmental well-being. The data we present today will show that productivity is not growing as fast as previously thought. Our distinguished panel will seek scalable solutions that improve the climate for productivity growth for smallholders and large commercial farmers. The 2021 GAP report would not be possible without the substantial efforts and contributions of our supporting and consultative partners. Our supporting partners provide funding for the GAP report and other activities that are part of the Global Agricultural Productivity Initiative. They are Bayer Crop Science, Corteva Agriscience, John Deere, the Mosaic Company, Smithfield Foods, and the Virginia Tech College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Our consultative partners enrich our work through their expertise in productive, sustainable food and agriculture systems, nutrition, and natural resource conservation. I also wish to thank Dr. Alan Grant, Dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, and the faculty members and university leaders at Virginia Tech who generously support our work with their time and expertise. Virginia Tech's motto is Ut Prosum, that I may serve. We have a global mission, and we are always seeking new partners for the GAP report and other initiatives addressing the world's most complex and urgent challenges. So now, please enjoy the program, and thank you for joining us today.
During the next 30 years, demand for food and agricultural products will soar as population and incomes grow. How do we meet this demand while climate change threatens the health and availability of our land, water, and soil resources? Productivity growth is imperative for meeting the needs of a growing world while addressing the threats to human and environmental well-being. So, what is agricultural productivity? In agriculture, productivity is measured as total factor productivity, or TFP. When more crops, livestock, and aquaculture products are produced using the same amount or less land, labor, fertilizer, machinery, feed, and livestock, that is an increase in TFP. TFP needs to grow by an average of 1.73% per year to sustainably produce the agricultural products needed in 2050. The most recent data show that TFP is not growing as fast as previously thought. Low-income countries, home to many small-scale farmers, are experiencing negative productivity growth. Climate change has a significant impact on productivity, especially for small-scale producers who struggle to adapt. How do we strengthen the climate for sustainable agricultural growth? Accelerate investments in climate change mitigation research, especially for smaller producers. Increase access to science-based technology and information to reduce risk from pest and disease outbreaks. Expand producer access to markets and invigorate economic growth by improving infrastructure. Empower women and young growers through public-private producer partnerships. Increase availability of nutritious foods through regional and global trade. Protect agricultural ecosystems by reducing food waste and post-harvest loss. By working together, we can strengthen the climate for sustainable agricultural growth and ensure consumers have access to affordable, nutritious, sustainably produced food.
As we have seen, agricultural productivity growth is not increasing as quickly as previously thought. There are two reasons for this. The first is a change in the methodology for calculating productivity. FAO has published new data on agricultural capital, which includes farm buildings, livestock herds, and mechanization. This data gives us a more accurate view of how we are using these inputs compared to how much we are producing. In addition, New data reveals that human-caused climate change has slowed productivity growth by 21% since 1961. In drier regions of Africa and Latin America, it is as high as 34%. Before going any further, though, it's important to understand the difference between productivity growth, agricultural output, and yield. Agricultural output measures the gross amount of crops, livestock, and aquaculture products produced. Yield measures output per unit of input, so the amount of maize produced per hectare. Yields can increase through productivity growth, but they can also increase by applying more inputs to the land. Therefore, an increase in yield may or may not represent improvements in sustainability. Total factor productivity captures the interaction between multiple agricultural inputs and outputs. As a result, TFP is a powerful metric for evaluating and monitoring the sustainability of agricultural systems. Since the 1980s, total factor productivity growth, seen here in green, has been the major contributor to agricultural output. The use of inputs per hectare has declined significantly, and land expansion has remained relatively stable. For example, from 2001 to 2010, 18 million hectares of land were converted to agriculture. But without TFP growth, 52 million hectares of land would have been needed to generate the same amount of food, feed, fiber, and bioenergy. Today, we are witnessing some troubling trends in TFP growth and land expansion. In sub-Saharan Africa, nearly all agricultural growth is generated by opening new land for cultivation and grazing. By comparison, Latin America has improved their productivity and removed land from agricultural production. This is not a lost cause. Research shows us that farmers of all scales, be they in Africa or North America, are equally capable of increasing their productivity. In the GAP report, we advocate for 6 policy and investment strategies for accelerating productivity growth for farmers around the world. They are investing in public agricultural R&D and extension, embracing science-based and information technologies, improving infrastructure for transportation, communications, and finance, cultivating partnerships for agricultural development, food security, and economic growth, expanding and improving regional and global trade, and reducing post-harvest loss and food waste. To discuss these ideas further, we are now joined by our distinguished panel of experts and practitioners. I'm delighted to hear not only their answers to questions I'll be posing, but their responses to each other as well. So I'm going to introduce each of our panelists by name and then ask each of them to introduce themselves in turn, not only about their background, but also a little bit about why they are passionate about agriculture and what really motivates them to do the things that they do. So our first panelist today is Jehiel Oliver. He is the CEO of Hello Tractor. Eric Delmotte is a farmer in France. Dr. Shiboniso Moyo is the Deputy Director General of the International Livestock Research Institute. And Jim Gaffney is a General Development Officer at the Center for Agriculture-Led Growth at the USAID. So welcome everybody, it's great to see you and to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're so passionate about agriculture.
So Jim Gaffney, I'm with the United States Agency for International Development. I'm a General Development Officer. Some of the things I work on are seed systems and delivering really wonderful technology at scale to smallholder farmers and trying to be more efficient and effective at doing that very thing. So, why I'm passionate about agriculture? Well, I grew up on a farm in southwest Minnesota. I studied agriculture at every step of the way in my training, academic training. I was in the United States Peace Corps in southern Cameroon for a few years, working at an ag tech school. And then I joined industry. So I've been in industry, crop protection and seed industry for 25 years in my career before joining AID. So agriculture has been part of everything I've done practically from birth. to present. And I guess I just see so much potential for what agriculture can deliver for sustainable systems, sustainable intensification, for adaptation to climate change. And I really believe if we get agriculture right and continue to improve agriculture, it can even be a climate change mitigator. We can slow down climate change by doing better and being more efficient and more productive in agriculture. So those are the things that really get me fired up. I'm still involved with the family farm in different ways in Minnesota. Through marriage, I have another family, my in-laws in Cameroon. My wife is from Cameroon. They don't have the same inputs. The family farm in Minnesota has, all the inputs, new seed every year, hybrid maize, GM maize, mechanization, insurance. The family in the village in southern Cameroon has very few of those inputs available to them. And that's kind of the challenge I see. How do we get more inputs to the smallholder farmers so they can be every bit as resilient and adaptive and productive as a farmer in southern Minnesota or Iowa or anywhere else. So thank you.
Jahil, could you introduce yourself for us real quick?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on the panel. My name is Jahil Oliver. I'm the founder and CEO of Hello Tractor. We're an agricultural technology company that's farm equipment owners to smallholder farmers in need of mechanization services. So like Jim mentioned, there's a dearth of input available, tractors and mechanization being one of them on the continent. And we make these machines and machine access affordable to these small growers by providing them through a shared economy model, timely and affordable access. We do that by selling farm equipment owners fleet management software. That's how we get them onto our platform. And then as they engage in software, they can opt into our marketplace where we're also simultaneously organizing smallholder farmers who are willing and able to pay for services, but can't afford, nor should they even own, because their plots are so small. These farmers are organized through community-based agents who use a separate app to book on behalf of the growers, bridging that digital divide. And that enables the mechanization transactions to take economies of scale. The agents are paid a commission for that service. So there's some rural youth employment angle there as well. And then the tractor owners earn some additional revenue with the excess capacity that they have on their equipment. So we kind of think about that as a win-win situation and a way to bridge that mechanization gap. And mechanization is so important to farmers' productivity. We still have a long ways to go. We only have a few thousand of these machine owner customers on our platform. And there are literally millions of farmers to these services. Still a long way to go, but I think the model is a model that can scale and through our partners and the like. So, but thank you, and I'm looking forward to questions.
Sure. Bonnie, introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about what your work is and what you're passionate about.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm delighted to be in this panel today. I grew up in Zimbabwe in Southern Africa, where my parents had a small piece of land where they grew crops and kept some animals. They sold animals to send me and my siblings to school. This picture, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, is similar to that of many families in rural Africa now. I'm happy that many years later, I managed to study animal science with a specialization in animal breeding and genetics. Currently, I work for the International Livestock Research Institute, ILRI, whose mission is to improve food and nutrition security and reduce poverty in developing countries. We do this through research for efficient, safe, and sustainable use of livestock. I'm the Deputy Director General for Research and Development, leading the Livestock Genetics and Feeds and Forages pillar. We work with many millions of farmers, mainly in Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, to sustainably increase their livestock production and productivity. As the research organization, we work on livestock genetic improvement, animal and human health, feeds research, resilience and building resilience and sustainability of livestock systems, with a specific focus on research to improve climate readiness of livestock systems. We also have teams that are working on policies and advocacy to provide that needed evidence to support how to prioritize these investments by both national and international investors in livestock. So the statistics that really motivates me or pushes us as an organization, I just want to share one. And it also emphasizes that really the challenges are huge. The productivity levels in Africa and Asia's livestock are currently very low. For example, the average annual milk production of cows in a cow in sub-Saharan Africa is 6% of that in the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD countries. The figure for South Asia is 14%. East African dairy demand is growing by 5% per annum. So how are we going to meet this demand if we have these such low milk production levels per cow? So those are the issues that we have at hand. And so we have proven technologies, we have products and solutions and evidence through research that can help us to tackle some of these challenges together with a broad range of partners. So that's what keeps me motivated and entertained, and also for my organization. Thank you.
That's great. Lots of good things to dig into there. Eric, please introduce yourself to us. Tell us where you are, what you farm, and what you're passionate about in agriculture.
Okay, I try. So I farm in the southwest of France, so close to Bordeaux. If someone knows Bordeaux, just south of Bordeaux. I farm with my brother after my dad was retired, and it's a family farm that was created by my grandfather. So it's not so old. So now the farm gets bigger and bigger. We grow corn mainly, wheat, and a little sunflower. Most of our acres are irrigated through lakes or rivers, and also a well. What else? What I like a lot, I like technology, and I like new techniques also. That's why I went in Minnesota after my university when I was like 21, and I saw some new techniques like no plowing, or simple techniques, or no till, or that kind of things that we didn't use in Europe and in France especially. So I imported these techniques, and now I like a lot to try new technologies like GPS, like modulation, like we spread the right amount of fertilizer at the right place and the right amount of seeds at the right place. So I like it a lot, and I like crops also. I like corn, I like wheat, of course. And for the future, we have many concerns. I have many concerns for the future. One of them is climate change, the water access. Our summer are drier and drier, and more hot. But we still have the same amount of water through the year. But we have to manage that. It's not easy because we have some people don't like irrigation, and we also have to produce more with less, because we have less chemicals, less insecticide. So we have to improve our productivity with less inputs. Anyway, in Europe, generally in Europe, and especially in France. So we have. It's not easy, but it's a big concern for me for the next year.
That's great. Well, I think Eric's comments about climate change really lead us to our next phase of our conversation here. And I think, you know, in the report, we're really not only looking at productivity growth, but the intersection between productivity and climate. And I think we all are very cognizant now that climate change is very real for farmers around the world, and they're seeing it in different ways. And it's impacting their lives and their livelihoods more and more every day. So I thought I would ask each of you, from your perspectives, just as Eric has shared, how are farmers that you are working with, that you know, how are they experiencing climate change? What are the things that they are seeing? What are they worried about? What are you worried about as you do your work? And Jim, let's start with you.
Sure. So I'll start with, you know, farmers that I know really well. My family in Minnesota, my sister, her husband, my nephew, they're farming. I have, you know, neighbors that are farming. And I would say in Southwest Minnesota, so, you know, if you're looking at the map, that's northern US, just one border up would be Canada, just to set everybody straight here. So this is really the middle of North America, and this is maybe a little bit contrarian, but climate change hasn't really had a really adverse impact on them. You know, yields continue to go up in that part of the country. Their soils are getting healthier. Eric mentioned no-till. You know, since I was a kid growing up on the farm, tillage has changed. There's less and less tillage going on, which is, you know, good for the soil. So there's a lot of positive things going on there. I think the one thing that does impact them every now and then is more severe rainfall events. You know, getting 3 or 4 inches of rain in a couple of hours isn't good for anybody. And that seems, those types of rainfall events seem to be happening more and more, and that can have some real consequences. The other farmers that I know, you know, going back to Cameroon, Central Africa, they are probably more impacted. You see changing weather patterns. The rain doesn't show up on time like it used to show up, or at least it's not as consistent as it used to be. So the rainy seasons are delayed or shorter, or you know, maybe not as much rain, or like I said, really severe rainfall events followed by no rain for a spell. So that makes it tough. And the other problem in Cameroon and lots of parts of Africa is the fact that farmers are using some very old varieties of crops. So if you're using a 20 or 30-year-old variety, that variety is in no way adapted to the current environment. And so that's where the family in Minnesota has a real advantage. New seed, hybrids, GM technology, soil fertility management, everything is new every year. They have so much technology coming at them, they can make choices. In Cameroon and a lot of parts of Africa, the choices aren't there. The options for these farmers to adapt and be more resilient are not there. So those are the things that really concern me. So thank you.
Great. Jahil, Jim was talking about seed technologies and their role. Talk to us a little bit about mechanization and where does that come into the issues of climate change and what farmers are facing. Is there a role for mechanization in helping to improve not just their productivity, but how they adapt to climate change?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some really important components to mechanization that can build resiliency on a farmer's field. One of the technologies that we've been promoting on our platform is deep ripping, specifically breaking the hard pan so our growers can better access the water resources in their field And then when there's too much rain, avoid puddling in the fields, which can also have a negative effect on yields. And I think what's interesting is that our growers are more aware than you would imagine. You can go to some pretty rural communities across the countries that we operate in, and these farmers talk about climate change. Now, sometimes they don't have the scientific vocabulary, but they do know that weather is much more erratic, and they're opting into new technologies to mitigate some of the risks that come with that variability. And for our business, I mean, as Hello Tractor, we're trying to solve a logistics problem where we operate in the tropics, where each of the countries that we operate in have these different agroecological zones with different planting behaviors within each zone. And we're trying to take a tractor and use the weather as the predictor as to when that machine should go into that zone and service the farmers that we organize. Now, if we can't predict the weather, then of course that becomes more of a challenge. And so even us as a company have to adapt to these new realities. But certainly things like deep ripping, I think the next step is going to be what Eric mentioned around no-till and minimal tillage. We started doing field demonstrations with our growers starting in Kenya, where I am today. And we want to expand that out further and partner with CIMMYT, one of the CG centers, on getting more of this information out to our growers so that they are aware of the benefits of no tillage. And I think the one benefit is that when you organize these last mile communities, you kind of get forward guidance on their receptiveness to these new technologies, and then you can invest into that new demand, right? So if we start seeing pockets of demand for no-till, right, then we can start to organize our loan products around financing the equipment to service that new demand, direct seeders and all the other equipments that you'll need to service that new demand. And so that's one of the benefits. So it's really it's an issue around first educating the growers of the benefits of these new technologies, but then making sure you can lubricate the market to address that demand when it does arise. And there's some real leapfrog opportunities because some of these growers, 55% of our farmers have never received any mechanization in the history of their farming. And so they now have an opportunity to bypass traditional tillage and go right into climate smart agriculture, which is exciting. There's less behavior change. That muscle memory hasn't set in yet. So that's exciting as well. But there's a lot to be done along that journey, but both in educating the growers and then making sure you have the resourcing to lend against that demand that you're creating through these education initiatives.
I'm going to break into our pattern here a little bit, and Jahil's just been talking about kind of market incentives. And Jim, as an expert in seed systems, can you comment a little bit from the seed side about how the market issues that are involved in developing seed systems so that farmers can get new varieties?
Yeah, so that's a tough one. Definitely a tough one. If you look at hybrid maize throughout East Africa as an example, it's been fairly successful in a number of countries. There's a value chain that is developed for hybrid maize. Seed companies are interested because it's profitable, and there seems to be enough off-takers and a transparent market in enough countries that hybrid maize, the seed system for hybrid maize, does develop and can be successful. Ethiopia was just a knockout success. Starting around 1995 to 2015, Ethiopia just did wonderful things with hybrid maize. Most of the crops, though, are not hybrids. They're open pollinated varieties. So farmers can save these seeds. And so there's less incentive for the private sector to be involved, and a market does not develop. So our challenge there is to look at how we can develop these seed systems more effectively so there's downstream help. We know there's good varieties available. There's new varieties available. We have to figure out how to get that new germplasm, those new genetics into farmers' fields. And there's a missing piece there, that in the US and in Europe, there's different organizations with government help that have developed breeder seed, foundation seed, certified seed, and then that certified seed can then go to the farmers. In many countries in Africa and Asia, that middle piece is missing. The early generation seed piece is missing. And it's not easy to develop that, because it, in the US, it's still to this day, for some open pollinated variety crops, it takes an injection of let's call it what it is, taxpayer help. There, it is subsidized in different ways. And then growers also subsidize it back through checkoff systems. When they purchase seed and when they sell grain, a bit of that money goes back to support the seed system. In many countries, that does not exist today. So there's a lot of work to be done there, but when it does work, it can be a wonderful thing. I mean, we've seen it work in different crops in Africa, and we need to build on that success and make it happen. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. Bonnie, let's come back to the question of climate change real quick, and tell us a little bit, what does climate change mean for livestock production, particularly for smaller farmers? What does this mean for them now, but looking forward as the climate continues to change, what is this going to mean for them?
Thanks, Anne. As Jim has mentioned, that in most parts of Africa, the impacts of climate change are real, and the livestock sector is really threatened by this. We see more and more extreme weather events, and that causes lots of droughts. We're seeing that as even now in East Africa. So farmers are losing animals during these very long dry seasons. And we know that animals are their assets. They use these for other benefits, for their whole livelihood, for income. So if you lose your asset, it means really your life is threatened. So these extreme events, weather events, are pushing farmers to the very edge of what they have for their whole livelihood. So a loss of an animal means you have lost your livelihood. So what does it mean then going into the future? How can we work and support the farmers to adapt to these harsh conditions, and also to continue to mitigate some of these impacts? We're working with farmers across different areas. We're trying to look at adapted animals that can help in the areas of breeds, the feeds, and the whole rangeland management systems. As you can imagine, these animals now have to walk long distances to fetch water. And if they are not strong and they are weak, they will not survive. It's you've seen in the press what's happening in Kenya, in some parts of Kenya. If people don't have enough food for themselves, and then they lose what they could hold on to. It's too much. It's a lot, yeah.
Eric, you talked earlier about how what you're worried about in terms of climate change, and you've adopted some pretty innovative approaches on your farm. Do you see more farmers interested in adopting new practices, things like no-till or other things that you are doing? Is there interest? Are a lot of farmers taking these on, or is it still here and there certain people want to do it and others don't?
More and more farmers are trying new techniques, and especially no-till or minimum tillage. Some area in France, they don't care much about it because everything is much easier. It's flat, the climate is okay, there is enough rain, not too hot. But especially in the south of France, where it's hot and dry in the summer, and the yields can be much different from one year to the other. So we try to have less difference through the years, and no-till, minimum till, or that kind of technique are one way to get it. So more and more people try it. More and more they improve it. So yes, definitely it's a good technique and good technology for us.
Great.
Yes.
Well, I think you've all expressed some very specific ideas about things that we need to do to improve and things that exist that are working. So in our last few minutes here, I'd like to hear from each of you about how do we scale up these solutions, not only for farmers to adapt to the climate, but to increase their productivity, which is going to be so important, not only for their building up their incomes, but just their lives in general and the economies of our rural areas around the world. So how can we boost what already works? What changes do we need to make to remove obstacles so that more things can happen? So Jim, I'm just going to go ahead and start with you again.
Sure. Well, that's what we work on at USAID. How do we get technology to scale, and how do we impact more smallholder farmers? And there's a few things that we think are very important. Number one, we need to get the policy right throughout Africa and Asia to allow farmers to thrive. There are some funny hurdles in the way over the years, things like restricting export of grain when maybe grain is starting to be in short supply. Prices are going up, so governments say, well, we're going to keep the grain inside our borders, and that's good for consumers, keeps consumer prices low, but it's a very tough disincentive for farmers. There's no reason for a farmer to make an effort to produce more grain if the price is kept artificially low. So then there's all kinds of policy initiatives going on. And we're moving in the right direction. Make no mistake about it. Policy is improving to allow seed companies to do a better job and thrive and de-risk seed company activity. So there's the second thing. We really need to get the private sector more involved, and we need to find more ways to make the seed business attractive to the private sector seed companies, and not just for hybrid maize, but for other crops as well. So what does a private sector look for? Less risk, good policy, higher revenue. How can we help deliver that? Those are the types of things that we think about, and those are the types of things that we need to do to make sure we're moving more technology into farmers' hands. Thank you.
Great. Jahil, you have just entered into a big partnership in the private sector with John Deere. Tell us about how that partnership can really influence and scale up what you intend to do. And we're running close on time, so give us about 2-3 minutes.
I've never talked for less than 2 or 3 minutes.
Come on, Jahil, you can do it.
Okay, let me focus here. Well, I think, first of all, in our ecosystem, working particularly across the last mile is so resource intensive that you have to have a coalition of partners. John Deere being a global leader in mechanization and agricultural technology brings expertise and certain institutional capabilities that we can leverage on. And we bring some local market understanding, particularly around the contracting business in the emerging market. And I think that coupling of expertise can unlock value. And then we work with other players, even outside of mechanization, people who you wouldn't necessarily think about immediately, like a Moody's, who we partner with to create an underwriting framework to finance more tractors, but use the underwriting framework to incentivize the right behavior. So scoring credits higher if a tractor owner is looking to finance machinery to do no-till versus some conventional tillage, right? Or incentivizing tractor owners who want to work exclusively with smallholder farmers. That person gets a higher rating. And so bringing these coalition of partners together, working with research and the CGs and academia, as well as the private sector, is the only way we can close these gaps and create the kind of value for our growers. And it's a long journey, and we won't walk it alone. So we work very closely with these corporate partners, public, private sector, to try and move faster through a coalition of willing. 2-ish minutes.
Well done. Bonnie, from a livestock sector and a research sector, what are the priorities for research around livestock, particularly as it applies to smaller farmers?
Thanks, and my colleagues have tackled the issue of the need to work with the others, like the private sector. So we are looking at opportunities to deploy some of our technologies, proven practices, working with the ICT companies, where we looking at developing digital platforms which will enable us to be able to record some of the animal performance and also analyze this data and relay back the information to the farmers. So we're looking at partnerships in the area of how we can better identify tropically adaptive breeds that can improve productivity. We partnering again in the areas of feeds and forages to test, identify, and also scale at large, working with the partners. We are working in the area of animal health to continue to understand the interface between the animal, human, and environment using the One Health approach. Another priority for us now is the whole area of coming up with to identify and evaluate some of the climate adaptation practices for improved productivity. Therefore, looking at some of the climate smart solutions. So in a nutshell, I would really look at the whole range, the genetics, the feeds, the health, and the climate adaptation strategies. In a nutshell, that's what I would put forward as going, looking into improving productivity gains in the livestock sector. Over.
That's great. Some really good insights there. Eric, I'll finally come to you. Just in terms of looking ahead, what are some things that you would like to be trying on your own farm, but also that you would like to see more farmers doing in order to increase the productivity there in France?
Something is not easy in France and in Europe, but especially in France, is that we don't have access to some new technologies that we would like to have, like GMO or some new insecticide. So I like nice crops. I like clean crops. I like all that kind of things. But it's getting hard and hard to get that done because we don't have access to these new technologies, because of the citizens, the French citizens, they want greener world, less pesticide, less tractors, less everything, and less water for agriculture. So so it's not easy to manage that. What I would like to see is we go in the right direction. Right now, we are still in the right direction. We improve our productivity through new technologies, through mechanization, less pesticide as much as we can. So I like it. But we would need new technologies that we don't have to improve our productivity, to work in better conditions, and it's not easy to manage that with most of the citizens. We are not always agree, but we try to, and we have to communicate, to speak about our job. And it's not always easy, but we have to open our farms. We have to talk a lot. We have to share. That's new. It changed a lot for the last 10 years, I would say. But we have to. We are in the middle of the country. Everybody can see us. So that's a major change for the last few years. And for the future, I hope we'll be more considerate, because now it's not easy to be a farmer in France, in Europe, or in the world, because sometimes we are seen as like we pollute a lot, or we use water, too much water, we spare the water, and it's not easy to manage that. But we have to improve all of that.
Well, I think that's a good way to end our discussion, and hopefully the GAP report this year can play a role in helping educate people in what productivity is and why it matters, and why we need to be investing in it and prioritizing it in our food and agriculture systems. So, to our panelists, thank you so much for sharing your insights. I encourage everyone to go to our website, globalagriculturalproductivity.org, and enjoy the resources you find there. Thanks so much, and thank you everyone for being with us today.